So we're looking at class of service here, and the first thing I'd say is there are some really excellent fast-track videos on class of service where the presenter's done an excellent job of how the packet moves through the router with the Juniper and the location of the policers, etc. And how the router will classify traffic and store that information in the forwarding class and the packet loss priority, and then use that information later on the scheduler or on the rewriter. So that's really excellent video, which obviously I recommend and is almost the foundation point for looking at this whole topic. So here we are, we're in class of service. I've shortened it to COS because it gives you more space on the board. And the first thing that we want to do is give some of these binary numbers some more readable values. So what we're going to do, the Dscp values under the code point alias, we're going to give it a nice alias here of L3VPN. And of course, I'm only showing the one alias, but of course, you've got several binary values here. So you may have L3VPN, L2VPN, BE for best effort, etc. So we're going to give it a nice alias. We're going to call it L3VPN. Now the next effective alias we're going to do is going to be the forwarding class. And remember, this is the value that gets saved as the packet goes through the router. And we're going to use this value. It's really the key point. If this was a database, it would be the database key. So here we have the forwarding class, and we're going to rename the queue to a readable value. And our goal here is to try and get that name as close as we can to the Dscp name. Because if we can get these names the same, then we can literally refer to our forwarding class, L3VPN, knowing that it maps to Dscp, L3VPN. Now we're not going to get a perfect mapping, but we're going to get as close as we can. So here we have L3VPN. We have this in orange because this represents the forwarding class. Although, as I said, we're trying to map that to the Dscp value or the EXP value itself. Then the next part of this is the classifier. So as traffic arrives at the router, we would like to classify it. Here we have a Dscp classifier, and we could have an EXP classifier. We've called our Dscp classifier Dscp classifier. It's as good a name as any. And here what we're going to do is we're going to refer to the forwarding class, refer to the loss priority, and attach it to the code point L3VPN. So what we're basically saying is, in this classifier, if the packet is has a Dscp value of L3VPN, attach it to forwarding class L3VPN. So building this classifier here, set class of service, classifiers, Dscp classifier. What we're really doing is we're attaching traffic that comes in with L3VPN code point into the forwarding class. And once we have it locked into the forwarding class, then we can use that forwarding class on the egress from the router to do the scheduling, and we can attach scheduling maps and go further along those lines. We're also setting the loss priority, and again that can be that's stored and can be used. Okay, so it's all very well storing data into the forwarding class, but what are we going to do with it? And there are two sort of outbound functions. I'm going to look at these in the next example in a bit more detail. But basically, if you'd classified traffic, you might want to save that. So you've got forwarding class, packet loss priority. You may want to save that on the exit of the router, so that the next router in the chain doesn't have to do the same kind of classification. And that's if you have a complicated classification like a firewall filter. Here we're using a simple classifier, so there'd be no advantage. But that's the first output function, would be rewriting the data into the packet. The second output function, which we're looking at in this screen, is we're looking at the scheduling. So this is how we're actually going to enforce that class of service that we're talking about, by scheduling the packets. So the first thing we have to do is we have to build the scheduler. We can see this in yellow here. And what we've done is we've named the scheduler the same as the forwarding class, but we've added SC for scheduler. That way, it's going to be much easier for us to attach these through and check that things are correct because the names are similar. Now, inside the scheduler, there's a lot of data that we need to set. Most of this comes from a table, so I've left it to the right-hand side to keep it nice and simple. So this is one of the schedulers, the scheduler for L3VPN, named it the same, put SC on it. And then we need to prepare this to attach to the interfaces. So we're going to build something called a scheduler map. Here we've called this core interfaces because that's where it's going to end up. And on the scheduler map, we are connecting the forwarding class, which is the saved data inside the router, with the scheduler, which has a similar name, but we've added SC to it. So the scheduler map, we're preparing for where we're going to put it in its name, but it basically connects the forwarding class, which is really the key to the whole of this. This is the data that's stored as the packet passes through that forwarding class to the scheduler. In the next screen, we're going to be looking at the rewrite, and we're going to have a little look at the packet loss priority and what can be done with this. When we were in the scheduler before, we were looking at the scheduler for L3VPN, but of course there's going to be schedulers for each of the DSCP values and each of the forwarding classes. So this is actually the best effort scheduler that we're looking at here, because there's a drop profile map attached to it, and that's what we're looking at. So here we can see its best effort. We know it's a scheduler because we've put the suffix SC on it, so we can identify it easily. There's a drop profile map on this, and basically it's using the high drop from the drop profile. So if we have a look at the class of service drop profiles, set class of service drop profiles, we have both low drop and high drop profiles. And here is where we can put in some complex detail on how we're going to do the drops. Is it going to be smooth? Are we going to interpolate between the drop levels? And we can see the various figures in here for the fill levels and the probabilities at each, and whether or not we're going to interpolate a smooth graph on those. So here we're in the scheduler. The scheduler we're looking at is the best effort scheduler. Previously we looked at the L3VPN scheduler, but of course there's a scheduler for each traffic type in the DSCP values and in the forwarding classes. And we're simply looking at the drop profile map, which in this case is attached to this scheduler.